Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is June 10th, 2024. The meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable on the Government Access Channel, Channel 8, and you can watch it after the meeting has been concluded. The agenda for this meeting is on the town website. So Chuck, will you still be going to be the clerk for the day, or would we need to assign somebody else?
Well, Chuck,
No,
Chuck, can you see who's here, Chuck?
I can, and right now I'm stationary, so I'm
All
good.
right.
I can do the role.
All right,
Lillian,
Here,
Hector,
I'm here.
Jackie,
Here.
Chris,
Here.
Tom,
Here.
Jim,
Here.
and Chuck is here. So we've got everybody in house.
thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment? Not seeing any, we'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes. There are three operating budget subcommittee minutes and one regular meeting. I suggest that we take all of the subcommittee minutes as a whole. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the subcommittee minutes. Are there any changes or corrections? Not hearing any. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
Oh, Lillian,
Yep.
Hector,
I will, since I didn't attend the meetings, I'm going to not vote.
okay. Jackie,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
I'm going to take myself first since I did attend. Chuck is yes. And then I'll ask Tom and Jim if they want to pass as well.
Correct.
I'm fine. Yes.
Okay.
I attended
Did
a couple of those sessions, so.
Oh, yeah, and Jim too. Then let's take up the May 13th CFAC minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Second.
Then moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the May 13th CFAC meeting. Are there any changes or corrections?
So I do have a couple of minor ones for the May 13th minutes. The title of the file implies that it's an operating budget subcommittee meeting. So you might want to, before you post it, you might want to fix the title. And then on page 1, second line from the bottom, Chair Wu clarified that CFAC cannot take the, and you want to replace the word with initiative. But Teresa, other than that,
Or it can, or you can just say they cannot initiate.
either
Yeah.
way, yeah.
The hard copy on the minutes actually says CFAC. It does not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the file name says operating budget subcommittee. Anyway,
Okay.
not a big deal. Those are my two comments. I thought it was fine.
Okay.
It was a great summary of that meeting.
With those corrections, are there any others?
Nope. I
With that-
only saw one of those. So good job, Hector.
With that, Chuck, will you call the roll?
I
on
will.
that?
Lillian,
Yes.
Hector,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Chuck is yes. So they're approved.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we're very happy and privileged to have Mark Ells join us. He's going to talk about the some topics where we could provide additional analysis and assistance. And how we got that is it's part of the process of CFAC when we submit our reports to the town manager. We meet with him, and for those of you who are new, Jim, would you describe how we do this?
Oh, sure. So once we present the reports, whether it's the CIP or the operating budget, the town manager has always provided us the courtesy of presenting that material to him, and we have a fairly lively discussion about what's contained in the report, what our observations were within the capital improvement plan, or in this case, when we met on the operational budget. And that's always a nice exchange. And we did take, because we recently had Neil resign over some areas in which he felt we should be doing more. We asked the town manager what might be, how would he might define the word more? And, you know, if the committee had the resources and the capability, we'd love to do more tasks that he might think would be appropriate for an organization like ours in assisting the town in taking a look at some of the critical projects, critical policies that they might want to have either for review. You know, for an example, I've said in the past, way back when, Mark, we got started with the private way, right? The road study, that was way back in early 2000. And in fact, you brought that up in one of your meetings. That might be something that we might be looking at again in the future. But just things like that, where you have an exchange and share ideas and thoughts. And the CFAC committee, I think, is uniquely positioned within the town committee structure to get a wide swath of information and visibility. We literally interview every department head throughout the course of the year and get perspectives on what might be coming down the path, what's important to each department head, how that meshes with the town manager's perspective on managing the town of Barnstable. So it's just all kinds of, we run across a range of topics. And so we took the opportunity of asking the town manager when we were there presenting the operational budget, what's some things that he might think that CFAC could be involved in the future. So with that as an introduction, I'll turn it back over to you, Lillian, or to the town, through you to the town manager.
Well, thank you for that summary. Based on our conversation with the town manager, I invited him to come to share with CFAC those issues that he has identified that we might help. So I'll turn it over to Mark Ells. And thank you so much for coming.
Of course. Well, thank you for serving on the CFAC. It's a very important committee to advise the manager and the council exactly the way that you have been. And I think the value grows as the complexity of our community and the financial strategy for our community grows and becomes more complicated. I'm going to be general at first, but then really move more over to a discussion of the capital improvement program, and I'll explain why. But I want to say thank you for the report you gave relevant to both our capital improvement program and our operating budget. You went into the significant amount of depth and detail right at the right level, meaning, certainly, Mark Milne lives this, and I work, and so do our department heads and the assistant manager work with Mark day in and day out on budget development, kind of never stops year round. I think that by appropriate level, I think CFAC really focused in both cases, as you have in the past, but even more succinctly this year, on the need to relook at some of the policy moving forward for the town council and some of the challenges moving forward, given what we're trying to accomplish in our community. So when I begin to look at when I begin to look at both the CIP and the operating budget, I feel my first ask, not last by any stretch of the imagination, would be relevant to our capital improvement program. And it goes without saying, your comments, I think, were right on, relevant to the existing plans as approved, specifically our 5-year CIP and our comprehensive wastewater management plan, and two more major efforts that are evolving at this point are how do we proceed with private roads in the community? And I'll come back to that one to just share a little bit of background of mine and then insight into, how I'm looking at it. And then specifically the schools embarking on, a comprehensive facility evaluation, both facilities and grounds. Though they do have a pretty good handle on grounds in the vicinity of the high school, middle school area. But that will absolutely play into, capital needs for our community, whether it be repair and expansion or whether it be new facility. So all of that's on our horizon. Now, I think you articulated it well, and Mark certainly shares it on a fairly regular basis, that we've had a very solid plan in place, moving us to where we are today. But moving forward, you're right on with your comments about a need to make policy decisions on how we are going to manage proceeding with the occurrence of cost relevant to specifically wastewater management. And that kind of dovetails right into private roads. And I'll explain why, because I have had people say to me, well, we can't really do both. The cost for private roads is significant. Do we really want to move, in an active way in the near future on private roads? And my answer is, I believe we should. And I've said this to council that I would struggle with recommending any capital project that we also didn't have a corresponding operating aspect to it, meaning an operating maintenance budget, with the intent of maximizing the useful life of that asset. Now we're going to go out, we're going to do a comprehensive wastewater management plan, of which part of it in the current version is probably sewering about half of the town that isn't currently sewered. And in doing that, many of those roads are private. And so though it may appear that as a standalone, looking at policy for private road and the taking of private road, and therefore the public maintenance of those roads once taken, might be something that, do we really want to do that now? I think it's unavoidable. We're going to go out there and spend dollars on behalf of our community on half of the private roads in town with no obligation to maintenance post that investment on behalf of our residents, whether it be some fee-based revenue source that this comes from, whether it's included in the sewer assessment, whether it are general tax dollars that ultimately are used for it. I would not recommend that's a responsible way for the municipality to move forward without knowing how they are going to be maintained. And there is a very, I'm sure I'm sure Jim and maybe others have heard the way that we approach pavement management of public roads. It's a fairly scientific approach to maximizing the useful life, the avoidance of having to, make premature repairs for various failures from lack of maintenance, primarily drainage, but there are other as well, is significant. And so we're going to go out there, and over the next 2 decades plus, we're going to be, repaving these roadways. And I believe there needs to be a corresponding understanding of how that maintenance will occur. And I believe the best way to do it is by taking them. There needs to be a lot of thought in how to do this, because so it's not going to happen. It's not a quick decision to be made. I mean, the widths of roads throughout our town vary significantly. We have a standard spec for how we do roads, new roads. And many of our roadways will not and should not be redeveloped up to that level, even though we're going to be putting sewers in them. And we're going to need easements or taking of the road to qualify for the primary funding source from the state at this point. So I do think the two dovetail. There are private roads that aren't part of the CWMP. And we should talk about how to do those. We should quantify it. We should work hand in hand with the CFAC so they thoroughly understand this. And then ultimately, in your advisory role, provide that look from your perspective at what you believe the alternatives are, and a recommendation for what you believe at the time, whatever the best alternatives are. And our council, and certainly myself and our staff, would greatly benefit by that. So I really would hope that you could embark on looking at, and this Thursday night, BBW is going to give you an update, you being the community, on the CWMP and wastewater. They're going to talk about within a year, we'll be doing our first 5-year update. And then we're going to talk about everything from traditional sewering through to innovative on-sites and how all of those currently in the current plan play into that. But then long-term, what opportunities might be there on the table for us to consider. So it's going to be a dynamic, complex plan. I do not think that a lot of the financials in comparing alternatives for wastewater treatment are apples to oranges. I mean, they are apples to oranges, not apples to apples. So, that'd be interesting as you look at this more deeply, your thoughts on that. But certainly the council, and I spoke to Felicia Penn, the president of the council today, telling her what I was going to share with you all from my perspective. And she had no apprehension of it. And certainly appreciates any and all support that the CFAC has given and will provide us in the future. So, I think comprehensively looking at our CIP, looking at the various alternatives, the existing funding, I think when both the CIP and the ops budget review began looking at some other alternatives to potentially generating more revenue in the future, that aren't initially debt service consideration. So, debt exclusion vote rather. And I think that's a good thing. I think we're going to need to do that. I believe we're going to need to prove to our community that we have exhausted every opportunity to not ask for more tax dollars. And ultimately, we'll have to make some tough decisions on whether the movement of us forward on our wastewater or our school facilities or the private roads or the general CIP that we have for the expansive infrastructure we manage in the town of Barnstable. is collectively going to have us go back to the voters and ask for more money. So, I guess that's my view in a nutshell. And I'd very much, Mark's going to give an update in July on the financial side of the CWMP, DPW this Thursday night on the technical regulatory side. So I think shortly after both of those, if we could begin to roll up our sleeves and begin to discuss this in detail, I think that would be extremely helpful. And I think it's going to merit more discussions, and I'm always available to come to your meetings if you ever have any question. I mean, much of what I say, Mark Mill knows, so I would imagine he probably, it's not coming out of my mouth, but certainly, we discuss all of this regularly along with other senior staff, specifically Andy Clyburn, the assistant town manager. And no, so that's how I would see us most immediately look at this. And then from time to time, there'll be other issues, whether it be a housing discussion, or whether it be a, solid waste disposal discussion, another one coming up, but it falls under the CWMP, and you'll hear Dan Santos discuss it. We really haven't begun to look at it yet from a financial standpoint, but very soon we know a lot about our groundwater. We know it contains a lot of the things that we've put into it over the last 100 years. We also know that the wastewater treatment plant very soon will be at a level of discharging a product that is cleaner than the groundwater.
Mhm.
And so I think that for a lot of people, if you lived in California or Colorado, you've been having this discussion for a decade at least. I guess if you're in the Navy, you've lived it, or Coast Guard, I guess. But water reuse in a potable form is not something that here on the East Coast is typical, but this is coming. We foresee in the next decade or two, all water on the Cape will be filtered. And it's just because we live on it and we are able to, identify these things. It doesn't have to be a fire foam or some other, what they call them, point sources. It can be non-point sources. It can be on-site septics. And so that's going to be a very interesting challenge as we move forward. So there's another discussions about the financial aspects of whether you try to develop a new water supply somewhere in town, or do we reuse treated wastewater? Absolutely a financial component to that. So yeah, there's a lot. I don't think there'd be any list of it's more, okay, which ones and when, rather than do we need the assistance and active involvement of our comprehensive advisory committee. So I think I'll stop there and try to answer any questions you may have.
So-
Mark, did I miss
So-
anything?
No,
You've just given us a tremendously comprehensive overview of things that need to be done. And let me see if I can summarize what you've just said. You were talking about the financial policies. We're talking about the schools, the changes of demographics and the facilities, whether we need to repair, expand, or add new facilities, the private roads, policies and public maintenance of private roads, and the alternatives for future revenues so that we're not taxing more of the residents, the solid waste issue, housing, and then water, which of course is a very important component. And I got a couple of subsets of that. One is recycled water as potable, water supply from the groundwater, wastewater treatment, and the possibility of a new water supply. Did I get that?
I do, and then it's a matter of how we tie it together, and therefore you're
Yeah.
able to provide, your, your shared insight into, what you feel are viable options and viable options, in a financial strategy, and very specifically at some point, and helping to advise on the appropriate point that additional revenues are going to be needed. And Mark's framed that for us. I think much of what you've said this year very clearly mirrors what I've heard from Mark on when we're going to need that. And so we need to start that discussion, now, so that we can be advising town council and help them as they move forward with some pretty, difficult policy decisions.
Of all of those issues that you raised, and all of them are very important as we go forward into the future, both for CIP and operating budget, are there one or two that you would recommend for us? to help
I
you
would
with-
very much appreciate your attention to the CWMP.
Yeah.
Though we're not under, and we don't want to be from a financing standpoint, any sort of, order from the state on this. We have an approved plan. They agree with us. We're meeting all requirements, at least as of today, relevant to it. We do need to advance this. I think stopping could result in both third-party action and regulatory action. So we very much need to hold the schedule, and that's going to put us with some decisions, some significant decisions, probably within the next 18 months at the, so we need to be discussing those now. My experience with municipal budgeting is we're always in like a 2-year process. So 24 months to me is a blink. It's because what we're doing now is what we're living with 24 months from now. So, yeah, we would bear so waste for the CWMP. And then to me, that ties into the private roads issue because, very soon we're out there now repaving roads. Most of them are public because we're doing the mains right now. But as soon as we move into the neighborhoods, those are private. That's where the private roads are. They're not the big collector roads for the most part. There are some in town, but it's the neighborhoods. And so, dovetailing those together would be important. And I'll be aggressive here and ask for a third. The schools are moving forward with their facilities plan. And
Yeah.
I really think that needs to be looked at. It's on their website. I think I've heard discussions that referring to past history, that when major capital efforts like an upgrade at the high school, et cetera, occurred, it went out to a debt exclusion separate to itself. So certainly Mark could advise on that, but I did bring this up with Sarah. I did make Sarah Ahern, the superintendent. I did make her aware that I was going to mention it to you all, and she had no apprehension at all about that. I mean, we talked a little bit about the good advice you've given us for a long time. And, and she's a good decision maker and she can use good advice. So she didn't balk at that at all. So that's another one that's going to keep moving here.
So Mark, I think you and I spoke about private roads a couple of months ago, and I sent an email to Griffin Bowden, town engineer, asking him some questions about the CWMP and the private roads. And he gave me some information which the full committee might like to have. I asked Griffin, how many private roads are to be sewered in phase 1 of the CWMP? And he said 145 roads. I asked him what the mileage was of those roads, and he said 26 miles. Now, I'm not sure if all 26 miles will be sewered, but the total mileage of the roads involved. I also asked him, is the town required by law to bring a private road that has been sewered up to code, including installation of drainage, curbs, sidewalks, etc. And he said, no, the town isn't required to bring the private roads up to code. And he went on to say that the gravel roads, for example, are anticipated to be left as gravel. And he did say the hard surface roads will be repaved curb to curb, but there would be no additional upgrades, drainage, curbs, sidewalks, etc., that are envisioned in the CWMP budget. And then I asked my last question I asked him was, what's the estimated cost to the town to maintain a newly public road after sewer installation and renovation? And he said for the first 10 years, it's just cleaning and street sweeping. But after 10 years, you start getting cracks in the roads. And after about 20 years, you would need surface replacement and so forth. So I thought that was helpful to give a sense for the committee what's in prospect if and when we sewer private roads in town as part of phase 1 of the CWMP. I do have a question for Mark, or maybe it's for Lillian. Mark, when you talk about CWMP and planning over the next 18 to 24 months, you didn't use the word debt exclusion, but in the CIP report, and in Neil Kleinfeld's presentation to town council, he spoke about the need for town council to begin to look at debt exclusion for CWMP and to have it on the ballot in November of 2025. So I was just curious, are you, when you envision what CFAC might do, are you interested in having us, together with Mark Milne, of course, quantify the prospective scale of a first debt exclusion for CWMP? Is that what you envision us working on?
Usually Mark Milne does that, and then he'd share it with the CFAC. So,
Right.
No,
I don't know.
That's my impression.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think that and you please, if you if you don't agree with what I say, share it with me. But I very much view our advisory boards, commissions, and committees as, especially yours, that you possess a lot of expertise in the area of finance and comprehensively looking at issues beyond finance. And so, to a certain degree, it allows that objective look at viable alternatives based on, kind of the data turned into information that somebody like Mark Milne can provide you with. And then from there, you share what you see in those alternatives and even recommend what you believe is most appropriate. What's the prioritized order of those alternatives? And
Right.
so when you ask me about a debt exclusion vote, that's absolutely one of the alternatives. It's been one regularly discussed. It is typical for capital projects, and it's in a sense limited to, and you're familiar with it, the borrowing life of whatever it is you're accomplishing, and then the debt exclusion ends. And depending on the strategic plan that you have relevant to finances, different things that might occur, might go away, it might be replaced, etc. So I would very much see you weighing in on that comprehensive advice as to alternatives. And I would even go further and ask that it not just be one alternative. I like to have as many viable alternatives in kind of a prioritized order in decision making, because we all know that the optimal decision isn't always isn't always the thing that occurs. So for a bunch of reasons. So that would be my hope.
Okay.
And
But
I
what
I
we,
don't
what we, what-
disagree at all. I don't disagree at all with the fact that debt exclusion is on the table.
Right.
But I think it'll be important for the council and CFAC to feel very comfortable with how that would proceed if that was the option that was chosen, because Mark and I have to and Gareth, I'm pulling you into this. We have to really step back and just provide the facts, and it is very much a town council driven, and sometimes an outside objective party driven effort. And basically, we just provide the facts. That's, yeah.
Well,
So,
in our previous reports on CWMP, we had, as a committee, endorsed the debt exclusion, and we had recommended looking at WIF and the real estate transfer tax, which we now know is in the legislature. But we keep thinking about this, and I think collectively we can come up with probably more options to forward.
yeah,
And see
I
where,
think
and
it
see, and see
continues
how
that.
see where they land.
Well, I think,
Of course, we had recommended the sewer assessment at 17,000 from the report that we had submitted to you all. And the town council, of course, passed 10,000. So that's fine.
and it impacts other areas. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
you
right.
move one step forward and then
Yeah.
sometimes a step or two back, and then you reorganize and modify the strategy and bring it forward again. And I think that's where we are
Ah,
right now.
that's a good idea.
That's where we are.
Do you think it would be helpful if the town council was amenable to a fiscal policy update? We haven't done that since 22. And things have changed a lot.
I think what we should do is I will speak with the president of the town council and the vice
Uh-huh.
president.
Okay,
And I think that is it's kind of like, well, that's broader than any project, I think, is
right,
what you're
right.
saying. And ask whether they would be interested in hearing your your advice and recommendation relevant to that. I also think that a direct where your committee serves both the town council and is appointed by the town council and the manager. I think here forward, we should have leadership here with the manager as we talk about these things, because I think communication is key to making decisions as we move forward. And I'm more than happy to be a communication point through which information flows. But I think that the council would greatly benefit by hearing from you.
Thank you.
Yes.
What I'd like to do is to have each member of CFAC comment or have any questions, because your coming to our meetings is so rare that I'd like to give them an opportunity to make comments. So Chris, do you have any comments or questions for Mark Ells?
I think he pretty much covered everything I was gonna ask about. Something that Counselor Levesque had brought up, though, was reviewing town assets as far as properties and how best to utilize them. Is that something you think would be beneficial for us to look at, as far as any properties that need to be or should be redeveloped or sold off or whatever the case may be?
Um, I would, yeah, I could probably develop a list with a lot more than what I've said tonight on it, and that would be on it, Chris. I guess I tried to keep it to like the top 5 or 6 things. Absolutely. Coming from a public works background, asset management was central to much of what we did and do. And so, yeah, of course, those comments, that advice from our financial advisory committee is important. But again, I'd want to bring the leadership in. I'd want you to hear how they envision these assets and what they're looking to do, because I think there's been a shift. It's been in the works for a while, relevant to, how leadership and the council, has been communicating, at least with myself, relevant to assets. And, I think the CFAC should hear it, and then that question should be asked to the leadership. But I've shared with you what I think is big, comprehensive, and right in front of us.
Right,
And the assets are there too, but I think that the CWMP and those private roads are one and two on my list, certainly.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
right.
Yeah, the asset thing, I think, just is one component of the possible revenue sources,
Yes,
that would be
absolutely.
just one small piece, yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
you need to hear from leadership, because that was very much a regular discussion that, ever since really, well, I've worked under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 council presidents.
Hmm.
And I would have to say ever since the second one through, I would have to say at least 3 or 4 of them were very much focused on sale of assets and using that revenue to offset, other aspects of what we do in asset management. We've had a couple of legal twists to that recently, depending on the type of property that Mark got into a little bit recently. But more broadly, I hear a different approach now in preserving those assets in place and actually looking to acquire private property. So I think the CFAC should hear that. I work for the council, and as philosophy and approaches change, then myself and my staff adapt to that. And there's been a change. So, I think the CFAC should hear it.
Great. Jim, do you have any comments or questions? He's here somewhere.
You're
You're
on
on
mute,
mute,
Jim.
Jim.
Hold on. Sorry. I think the comments provided by Mark was spot on. And I think it begins to address the concerns that we've had as a committee, that there are other areas of interest that we would like to explore in conjunction and at the discretion of town leadership, whether it be council or management. I would caution all of us as to just exactly how much work we can take in, right? We are 7 people. And I know the work we went through to put out the CIP and helped a little bit on the operating budget. That's a lot of work. And most of us, I think, in our group are all still working. And, those come from nights and weekends. And I would just want to caution our exuberance about wanting to do more and help more, which is very laudable. But I think we need to also be cognizant of the effort that it would require to do a lot more. More, I think, is manageable, whatever that gets defined to be, but encompassing everything, it's really, I don't think it's feasible. So certainly we have a calendar. From October till now, it's locked and loaded, right?
Right.
So we have 3 or 4 months that we could do extra work.
Yeah.
And how we can fit that in needs to be mapped out, just as Mark Milne has done with his calendar, his budget calendar. That's well laid out. Deliverables and deadlines are met. And I think we would, if we were to take on another task of that magnitude, it should also have similar milestones and schedules that will allow us to, it's just not a feel-good type meeting. It's, we want to produce some work when we're done. I mean, we're all here, I think, because we want to do good work on behalf of the town. That would be my comment, is just be careful what you wish for. You might just get it, right?
That's true. Thank you. Jackie?
No, I don't have any comment.
Okay. Tom?
I'm going to withhold on comments too. I thought it was very interesting, Mark, and much appreciate the range of issues you raised.
And Chuck?
I think with Jim's good admonition as context, and Mark Ellis was very clear about the topic of prioritization. I'm happy that it seems that we can expand some of the work that we do, because a lot of the reports that we do start to touch on things, and then we keep them at a fairly high level. So personally, I think putting in some time to go deep on a limited number of topics would be awesome. So I'm very encouraged to hear this, and I appreciate Mark Ellis's comments tonight.
Yeah. I agree with you. I remember that when when the WRAC was established in 2015, CFAC had 3 liaisons to WRAC, and the meetings were filled with data and all of the investigations. It was sequential and it was intense. And I can tell you that the 3 of us who were on that subcommittee liaisons were so happy that we weren't officers of CFAC because it took up an enormous amount of time. And then it lasted for a year and a half, and CFAC was part of the WRAC financial subcommittee to figure out how much it would cost, how long it would take, what the alternatives were. And so I agree with you. Fortunately, issues like CWMP and the schools are part of what we are already partially familiar with, so that gives us a little head start. The private roads, some of us were involved with the original sewer construction fund, and before it was expanded. So I think we can as a committee can decide which major issues, not all, where we can begin to drill down, as Chuck has mentioned. So if that's okay with everybody, we've got a lot of work between now and the time that we begin our own subcommittee work again. How does that sound?
That makes a lot of sense to me, Lillian. Jim, I think your comments are very well taken. You know, there are only so many hours in a day. And Lillian, I agree with you that we've delved into especially CWMP in the schools, and those seem to be among Mark L's top priorities. Private roads is it seems to me is a coming issue as we get into the latter years of phase 1 of the CWMP. But the 145 roads and a lot of repaving, that's going to be an enormous expense to go anywhere beyond that. So, Mark, one question I meant to ask was, is it contemplated that the town, or are you considering contemplating taking the private roads, in other words, making the private roads that are sewered, making them public roads in effect? Is that on the table? Are you considering that?
Yeah, it is. There's 4 major categories under private roads that we're looking at. There's really 3 that are almost running and, you know, concurrent with each other, and then a 4th major category, and it's the roads that are the private roads that are within the CWMP, the existing collector roads that are private in town, and the private roads that have already gone through the temporary repair to private roads program and upgraded that road.
Right.
And so those 3 categories, I have made recommendations to council that we continue our discussion, and council has been supportive of that recommendation, but asked for more information, more data. How would we do that? What will it cost? What are the policy decisions associated with that? So I would expect that sometime before fall, I'll be giving another update. And but then the final category are all the other roads, all the other private roads that we really haven't come up with how we are going to address those. And, more broadly, the stats you gave are, I'm sure, spot on from Griffin, but, we've got 1,100 roads, 1,100 private roads in town, about 700 public roads. There's about 250 miles of public roads and about 200 miles of private roads. So, as I said earlier, the private roads are the neighborhoods that got developed primarily in the 70s and 80s on Cape Cod that were never taken by the legislative body. And when you jump ahead in the useful life of a road, we're at the end of the useful life. So, no, we've got decisions to make in the community relevant to this. It took decades to get into it, and I've said to council, I believe it'll take decades to get out, but I've been here, started in public works 35 years ago. Private roads were a primary issue then. The roads committee, both in 96 and 98, came forward with very sound recommendations. Portions were implemented. Actually, roads were taken that participated in the temporary repair to private roads program from about 98 through 2004. And then that stopped because it got referred to a roads committee of the town council. And we haven't taken roads since then. So, certainly history does matter. I think, and that was a good report, though the numbers are significantly outdated at this point as far as costs. But so I think there's some good reference points there. And if we had a 30-year plan for these private roads for all those residents that would like to see them become public, I think that's a responsible way to manage that asset. And most of our residents, you live on one. Hector, many of our residents have no idea of what a private road is. They don't restrict it in any way, so they don't view it as being private, being closed, and that's really not what the definition is.
And our real estate agent, when we bought on Deerfield, didn't disclose the fact that we're purchasing a house on a private road.
Yep. So that's. I think we have I think the CFAC and the town manager and the town council have a lot of work to do together moving forward. So, and we welcome your advice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I just ask one more time, since we can take advantage of Mark being here. If anybody has any more questions before we let him go.
Mark Milner.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I think what you have done is clarified for us areas that we can begin to look into more in more depth.
Lillian,
Mark Milner has a comment.
Thank
Who
you.
had a comment?
Yes, I would like to make a suggestion before Mark goes. Listening to the conversation and trying to be considerate of the membership's time commitment going forward, and with a fiscal or with a financial review coming up shortly in July on the CWMP, I think a good place to start for the group would be to hear that financial presentation on the CWMP, and then couple that with a review of the financial policy, because really that funding of that plan is going to affect our financial policy. And we may need to make adjustments to the financial policies that we have in place, tax policies, reserve policies, 60-40 revenue sharing allocations, revenue allocation between the capital side of the budget versus the operations side of the budget. So they kind of go together.
Yes, they do.
And I would suggest maybe perhaps if we can bring that, frame that, and bring that back to town council leadership with a suggestion that this group take a deep dive into both the funding of the CWMP and our fiscal policy and how they relate to one another. That might be where we go, and it's going to take us time. You know, we may need to spend a year looking at those to come up with, as Tom Andrew suggested, alternatives and ultimately some recommendations as to how do we proceed forward. So those are my suggestions.
Those are excellent. When are you presenting the financial update?
I believe they're meeting July 18th. They have their regularly scheduled meeting in July, I think is the 18th of July.
Yeah, they're gonna have you as a workshop that night, Mark.
Okay.
Okay. And DPW is going to provide an update on the CWMP as well.
On the 13th of June.
Okay. Got it. Are there any workshops that are going to be presented to the town council that would be beneficial for CFAC to attend? Because I know that the one they had on ponds was just excellent.
Well, I think that the one that we did last on, I can send you the series on private roads. If you haven't seen it, that you could certainly see that. I think that would be a benefit. I think the school committee has the school committee has a subcommittee on facilities, so I can ask Sarah what they've done. And I can also see if there's a link to share that with you, just so that you can see what's been stated to date.
That would be very, very helpful to us. It'll give us a foundation.
Yep, I
Yeah,
will do that. I will do
yeah.
that.
Thank you very much. Again, we appreciate your taking the time, and you've given us a lot of work, and we look forward to it. As you
Well,
know,
again, we greatly appreciate, your historical support for us, and your advice. And we look forward to, to whatever level you can continue to advise, that you do so. And I am always available, so never feel as though I am an infrequent visitor. All my other directors get invited every year, so you can certainly say, hey, he offered, we're gonna have him in at least once a year.
okay. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Yep,
you,
you're
Mark.
welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Stay well, everyone.
Before we move on to the next issue on the agenda, I notice that Gordon is here. Do you have any comments about Mark Milne's summary of things, challenges for the future?
No, I do agree. A debt exclusion is something we have to think about, whether we do schools 1 year and the CWMP another year. And how do we sell it? Yeah, I mean, in a sense, the rationale for it has to be pretty clear, because we know that, there are 25 to 30% of the homes in town are pretty much underwater when it comes to new taxes. It's going to be hard for people to accept that. So we have to think about them at the same time. We don't want to unhouse anybody, I guess is the bottom line.
Gordon, I'm sorry, 25% of the houses are underwater? What
No,
did you mean by that?
You know what? That's probably an economic term that I that I misused. The people are cost burdened.
Oh, okay.
And there isn't much room in their budgets, because of house insurance going up and food prices.
Right.
There are a lot of people on fixed incomes. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I get you.
Thank you.
Well,
Uh,
Gordon, let me ask you this. What is the general sense of the council now? I mean, given your comments about the debt exclusion, I mean, it sounds like a hard sell.
Well, if you historically, if you look back at the last 4 override votes, we've only one of them has passed out of the last
Right.
5.
Right.
So, and I think the new town councilors are just beginning to understand the situation. Mark Milne is going to explain more of it in July, on July 18th at the regular town council meeting. So that will be important. And when do we reach our borrowing limit so that we have to, sort of raise the debt, have a debt exclusion? We're doing all right at the moment, but we're gonna run into a wall in a couple of years. And we keep somehow we keep pushing that up. We get by, which is great, and it won't be the only debt exclusion, over 30 years. It's just the first of many.
Are you discussing any alternatives?
No, we haven't, as a group, we haven't discussed it.
Hmm.
It's it's sort of general knowledge out there that finances are going to
Yeah.
But at the same time, like Mr. L said, we can't not do it.
I see. Well, as we have pointed out in our operating budget, time is marching on if we're going to have that.
Yes, no, it was that your report was wonderful. And I implored everybody to read it.
And the same message was sent in the CIP report as well.
Right, as well.
Right.
That's correct.
Right, thank you. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming.
Okay.
All right, moving on to does anybody have any other comments? I think what we would like to do is probably the next meeting, talk about what Mark Ells has presented to us and see which ones we feel comfortable working on. And then based on, and apparently there's a presentation on private roads and a presentation by the schools on their capital repairs and expansion. And then we've got the CWMP, and it probably would be helpful for all of us to see those before we decide which one we're going to tackle. We could probably tackle 1 or 2, but not a whole bunch all at once.
I agree with that.
So does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So
And I do have a question, Lillian. How would that work be provided or given to us? Would we expect some kind of would it be like a formal letter? Maybe Mark Milne, you might be able to help out on this. How would that instruction come so it's in compliance with the administrative code?
Well, basically, the way I heard it is that if we expand CWMP, which we are already working on, we wouldn't need any specific requests. As far as private roads is concerned, because we have not worked on it, we would need a request from either the town council or the manager.
I think what will happen is we will, as town manager Els alluded to, he's going to bring this conversation back to town council leadership. And then that group as well as him will receive direction. And
Okay.
it may be in a form of a written communication through an email, for example. But I don't think it's probably not necessary to have a vote of the town council as a whole, unless the leadership felt that was necessary.
Yes.
But Mark, I agree with your idea that we hear your July presentation and then sort of pivot from there.
Yes, I think that's probably a good starting point for us, is to start with the presentation that we give in July and then immediately after that, start digging into it.
Yeah.
I think so.
So And that presentation, I think you said is July 17th, give or take.
July 18th?
And our CWMP, we meet formally only once in July on the 22nd. So we would meet in the wake of that presentation. So, but if you felt, Mark, if you felt okay with sharing your presentation in advance by email, I, for one, would be happy to take a look at it and give you any feedback, but probably just having had the benefit of reading it before you present it would be, I know would be helpful for me.
Well, normally what Mark does is after he has given it, he gives us the exact presentation that he made.
Right.
Yeah, if you have it available beforehand, and if you are willing to give us a preview, we would love it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Anybody else have any comments or ideas about how we should proceed? Okay.
I just have one other comment, which is, you know, we should, when we think about taking on additional tasks, and here I'm following on Jim Sproul's comment, not every task that we undertake needs to take the form of a formal written report. You know, I think somebody asked, I think Lillian, you asked about upcoming workshops that CFAC might attend or participate in. I think there are other ways of us interacting with town council and town management than simply issuing reports, which, as we all know, takes a lot of work. So I just put that out there.
Well, I think we as a committee, when we have a particular position, can forward it formally. It doesn't preclude that we can talk to counselors or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think there needs to be a formal position on it. Okay. The next issue on the agenda is the election of officers for next year. So that being said, I guess we'll start with the chair. Are there any nominations for chair?
I'd like to put a name forward. And I don't know, I mean, Lillian, I know you've been the chair for a long time and you've done great work and you're an asset to the committee, certainly. I've been impressed with everything you do, but I do feel like it's good to have a change every so many years. So I'm going to put Hector's name forward as the chair. Because I think it's just time to have a change of chair, not because anyone's not doing a good job, but a change in leadership is needed every so many years, I think, just to keep things fresh and moving and you know, new perspectives in leadership.
Is there a second? Are there any other nominations?
I'll use Chris's comments and vote for some consistency, and I'd like to continue under Lillian's guidance. She's been doing what I think is a good job, a combination of she and Hector and Chuck. To me, when I walked into this, it seemed like a good team. It's been working well. We've had members resign and we took their comments to heart. I think by having Mark here this evening is taking what we heard from all of us collectively and bringing it forward to the town manager and making some action. So being fairly new and not having the history of who's been doing what and where, I mean, I can read who's been the chair for the last 3 years or 4, but my experience is fairly new. So my vote would be to present Lillian, however it's properly worded, to Lillian to be the chair.
Is there a second for that? For a nomination to go forward, you have to have a second.
Can you second yourself, Lillian?
I don't think so. Okay. Nobody wants to get into anything.
Well, I would just make a
Would you
comment
like-
that, sorry?
Go ahead.
I would just make a comment that I completely agree with what Chris said about Lillian's great work and her leadership. I also feel that there's a mood among the committee members to be a little bit more proactive with respect to our work vis-a-vis the town council and also the town manager. And that's my position, that I think we need to have more substantive involvement with some of the major issues facing the town. And that's, so
Well,
I just put that out there.
Well, that is precisely what we discussed with the town manager, which is how we got him to come today.
Exactly
And-
right.
Yes. So I don't think that you are unique. I think all members of CFAC have been rigorous and enthusiastic and willing to take on more. And so I think that what you express is not unique to yourself. But we have done that. And we have taken the requests from both the town council and the town manager over the years, and for specific research and evaluation. And I think that comes within the administrative code responsibilities that we have. And so that's the way that we have done it. I don't think that you can take the initiative unless it is so it has been requested from us.
Am I correct in understanding that neither candidate has had a second?
That's correct.
Correct.
Oh, is that
That-
correct?
That is
Then
correct.
I'll second both candidates.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to me that we do need to choose a chair. We can't not have a candidate or even candidates. And that it's reasonable to have, if there's two candidates out there, then I think we should hear from both of them and then have a vote.
And I guess the natural question would be, do both candidates have an interest in being the chair?
Right.
Well, I certainly do. I've been on the CFAC for 6 years now, since March of 2018. I look back over a roster of CFAC members in 2022, and the only two remaining members are Lillian and me. So I feel like I've gotten a real education in municipal finance being on this committee, and I very much appreciate the chance to learn, and I look forward to making more contributions in the future.
Well, I'm starting my 12th year on CFAC. And I've have been a member since we established the Sewer Trust Fund, which has since become the Sewer Construction and Private Ways Maintenance and Improvement Fund. I served on the WRAC liaison, and have been with CWMP from the very beginning, and have written all of the information about CWMP for our reports, as well as the questions and answers, and of the CWMP for our annual financial report. And I think that I have been very, very supportive of members in helping them better understand public policy as well as public finance. My whole background is public finance. And as new members have come in, as Jackie and Neil and Chris know, I've tried to provided orientation and took you to the Mark Mills presentation at a civic club. And I've talked with Tom as he came on to explain what CFAC does and what its procedures are. And I have put in, as the chair, I have attended both subcommittee meetings and evaluations and analysis for years, principally to ensure that everybody understands, and if they need extra information or help, we can do that. Because it's very important to maintain the standard of our reports. But in any case, I would be interested in, and I'll tell you why I'm interested in it, because I believe that Hector is a member of the Town Council Housing Subcommittee.
No,
You are not.
no, no. I was originally going to put my name in the hat for that, but I declined to go forward. So
So
no,
there is no CFAC member on that.
no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. But I would like to complete my 12th year.
Would
Other
Hector being
comments?
on that committee change your, I mean, was that relevant to your decision, Lillian? That you want to remain chair? If he
No,
was on
no,
that
no,
housing committee or,
no.
okay,
I was
I'm
just
just curious.
I was just going to point out the commitment of a CFAC member on that subcommittee.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. No.
I think, Lillian, you maybe have been thinking about Neil. Neil did put his name forward for that committee, but when he resigned from
Yeah.
CFAC, he withdrew from that committee
Yeah, so-
process as well.
For some reason, I thought that you had stepped up to be a member of that subcommittee. So there we have it. Does
Other
anybody have
comments?
other
Other
comments?
comments or questions?
I guess what we need
Tucker,
to,
hold on, we gotta hear from everybody, Chuck, Jackie, Tom, everyone needs to at least ask a few questions or participate. It's a fairly interesting situation, so I've never experienced anything like it.
no, nor have I.
Can
Chuck?
you hear me
No.
okay?
Yeah?
Okay, good. I I guess I'm in the camp that says I'd like to see a change in leadership of the committee with no negative comments about Lillian. I just, in general, think that kind of fresh outlook, fresh leadership. I think Hector, since he's put his hand up, brings continuity and history. Hopefully, if Hector were chair, Lillian's still here, and so I'm in the camp that all else equal, I would like to see change, as I'm sure I would, X years down the road. I just think it's a good idea to rotate every once in a while. So that's my view.
I do have a question, Chuck, because I'm a bit confused. It was my impression that you have resigned.
Yes. Yep. I was. Yes. I was frustrated that I think again with all of Jim's concerns about getting what we asked for, that it felt like we were kind of doing the same reports every year and not digging and adding value like I thought we could. So yes, I was frustrated with that. Had a rethink, and especially based on the conversation that we had tonight with the town manager, and encouraged that there is support for us expanding our sphere of impact on the town, and that gets me enthused. And so I'm not sure what the proper term is, but I guess I submitted my unresignation when I got word that one of the topics for tonight was going to be an expanded role for the group.
Yes.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Chuck. That's awesome.
Yes. So I'm delighted that you've unresigned. Thank you.
I think we
right.
all are. We all
Yeah.
are. Chuck has
Thank you very
made a
much.
major contribution.
Yes. Okay. So I guess
I'm
Chuck,
going to continue. Jackie, would you please share us your thoughts?
I think this is a political committee, and in politics, we go through this all the time. I think it's just one of the phases that we're going through right now, where leadership wants to change or may change. I just think it's one of the things we need to understand and embrace.
I'm not sure I understood what you said.
CFAC is a political committee.
No,
And
it's not a political committee.
Well,
It's not designed to be a political committee.
from perhaps what I need to do is define the word politics. We are engaging the people and their finances and their well-being. And that's what I mean as politics. And in politics, things change. And sometimes they do for the better, and sometimes they don't. This is just another political thing. And I think we just go through the process of it. That's my take on it.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess the last person we need to hear from is Tom.
I think I'm very much in sympathy with Chris's argument. I think that change is often really important, and I think that might be the case tonight.
You mean, do you mean Chuck's comments, Tom?
Well, it was originally Chris, I think, but
Chuck
Yeah,
McKenzie. Yeah.
Chuck had certainly reiterated that, but I just
Yeah.
I want to make it clear too to Lillian. I have
Yeah.
nothing negative to say about what you've been doing or anything else. I feel like it is beneficial for committees and any entity to have leadership changes after so many years. You know, and obviously you've done great work, and I hope you're going to continue to do great work, but I just think that it is beneficial to have changes at the top. Not to say anyone's doing anything any better or worse than anyone else, because I think we all have the same goals anyway on this committee.
I think that you are correct. I think some of the newer members have not had the benefit of the continuity of leadership over the years. But I certainly respect your point of view. Okay. Chuck, will you take the roll, please?
What do we
I
do?
will. And am I role? I haven't done this before, so the role I assume is I call on everybody and they voice their preference for chair. Is that correct, Lillian?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. Okay. So Lillian.
I vote for myself.
Okay. Hector.
I do the same.
All right. Jackie.
Hector.
All right. Chris.
Hector.
Tom.
Hector.
Jim.
Lillian.
And I am voting for change as well. So by my count, that's 5-2.
Congratulations, Hector.
Thank you very
So
much,
with that in
everybody.
mind, Chuck, with that in mind, I'd like to change my vote so we're all in agreement. I'll vote for Hector.
Certainly.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome.
We will make it unanimous.
All right.
So if
Should
you,
we,
so as the new chair, you get to preside over the election of the vice chair and secretary.
okay. So, first of all, thank you, everyone, and I very much look forward to working collegially with everyone to have, as one of you said, we all have the same goals, and we want to do good and do well for the town and its residents. So I'm certainly working toward that goal. So for vice chair, does anyone have any nominations? I do have one, but I'm willing to let anyone else go first.
I nominate Jim.
I'm going to decline that nomination, please.
Okay.
Anyone else?
If Chuck is unresigned, then I will nominate Chuck.
For vice chair?
Yes.
I'll second that.
I was going to nominate Chuck, so I'll second Chris's second.
I move that the nominations be closed and it be unanimous.
Second.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Congrats, Chuck. Can we take
Thank you, I think.
All right, and then for the role of clerk or secretary, I think it's clerk that we use.
I nominate Chris.
I second that.
I'll
No,
third
you
the
can't do
second.
that because you're the presiding officer right now. You need
I'll
somebody.
second it.
I'll second
Okay.
that.
Shall we make it unanimous?
I move that the nominations be closed and it be unanimous.
Second that.
Great.
Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. So, Mark, for the next meeting, as Lillian said earlier, we should come, unless you have different views, Mark, on what we should put on the table for the 24th of June. We should all consider what topics, which of Mark L's topics we want to drill down on and come prepared to talk about those.
Yes, yeah, I can put together the agenda for the meeting on the 24th. If any committee member has a topic that they want to add to the agenda, I would just suggest that you reach out to Hector to let him know what that is, and Hector and I can communicate as to finalizing the agenda for the 24th.
Perfect.
I
Thank
wonder
you.
if I could also interject. We probably need to begin working on our financial report, the overview report that you put out in September.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be good to address at the 24th of June meeting
Yeah.
and
Because it takes a while to put together.
right. So come prepared maybe to raise your hand to volunteer for various sections of that report on the 24th as well.
I just want to point out that the chair has traditionally put that report together and is responsible for its content and quality.
Fine.
I'm just kidding you. We have
All right.
correspondence from committee members. I would like to propose that we as a committee send a letter of appreciation to Neil for all the good work that he has done on behalf of CFAC.
I think that's a great idea. Lillian, do you want to take a crack at drafting it?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. But I thought
And
it
then-
would be a appropriate expression of our appreciation for all that he did.
Yes. So if you want to take a crack at the draft and share it, then we can go from there and we could finalize it in 2 weeks.
Sure, that'll be fine.
Great.
If you
Are
could
they-
slip a line in there, Lillian, asking him to rejoin the committee, that would be awesome too.
I'm sorry?
If you could slip a line in there asking him to consider rejoining the committee, that would be awesome too.
Well, I'll let Hector reach out to him and see if he wants to rejoin.
All right. Well, let's work on the draft and then we can
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
and then move on from there. But I
All right.
agree. I'm really happy that Chuck rescinded his resignation, and if we could get Neil to rejoin, that would be great.
Yes. We have in the pipeline another member who has been approved by the appointments committee. His name is Jeremy Shea. He's a teacher at Barnstable High School. And if he is approved by the town council, he will be joining us at the end of this month. So we will be full up.
Well, that'll be 8, right? So
It'll
we
be
need,
8. But
yeah,
if you get Neil back, you'll have 9.
yeah,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah. Well, that's all I have. I think as a chair, you get to adjourn the meeting.
Right. Does anyone else have any comments, any issues they want to raise?
I want to express, I'm sure everybody feels the same way, that just to say thank you, Lillian, for all the years you put in. 12 years is a long sled, so thank you very much. It was very well done, and I appreciated our time.
Yeah, but Lillian,
Thank you for your kind words.
you're not going anywhere, Lillian, right? You're staying on the committee, and we very much value that. So
Oh. You're very kind. I have enjoyed working with this committee.
yeah, it's been good. Any other comments? Mark Milner, do you have anything to add before?
I just want to again inform the committee, as I did earlier this evening, that at last Thursday's town council budget hearings, the entire operating budget was acted upon. In reflection of that, to Gareth's comments, I think the efficiency to the process that we put in place this year, not having multiple department heads requeue up PowerPoint presentations and changing out personnel at the podium saved us a lot of time, as well as the fact that the council meets for 5 hours on a Thursday night as opposed to 4. So we can get more done in one council meeting. So, but everything passed as proposed in the operating budget. There were no changes to any department's requested appropriation. So we're done. We're done with the budget as far as acting on it. Now we just need to implement and manage.
Yeah.
That's it.
The easy stuff.
Right.
Exactly.
If no one else has any comments, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So
moved.
moved.
Second?
Second.
Chuck, can you, or Chris, can you
I
call the
guess
roll?
I should take the role, right?
Right.
Is that in any particular order? Does it matter?
No,
Officers first? Or, Well, I'll do it officers first and then by seniority, I guess. So Hector,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Lillian,
Yes,
Jackie,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody.